Hey, we're on.
I now call our board meeting to order. And just a friendly reminder that when you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute. Attendance has been taken.
Yes.
Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Seconder, Bob Powell.
Okay, and when you move it or second it, please call your name out so they can record it. Okay, any discussion? Ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carried. Are there any conflict of interest for disclosures this evening? No. Adoption of the minutes, November the 3rd, 2020. Someone like to move?
I'll move
moved,
to
yeah.
adopt the minutes, Eleanor Lindsay.
Seconder?
Bob
Leo
Powell.
Colleen, second.
Any discussion? Ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Committee reports. Policing Committee, Director Susan Cassidy, please.
Sorry, my mute on the iPad disappeared for a minute. Okay, Community Policing Committee report for December the 1st, 2020. The committee met with Minister Mary Wilson on November the 6th to advise her of the region's dissatisfaction with the policing services of the region. We still have 4 MLAs remaining to brief. On November 18th, the RCMP issued its partner and stakeholder survey, which staff completed in accordance with our position and correspondence with the Department of Public Safety. This is a national survey and only one of the questions will identify the response from its province of origin. The committee, through the chair, will be asking the Public Service Minister to come and address the board regarding the quality of service that is being provided to our communities. Region 12 has already done this and has received a response from the minister that they will be contacted by someone from the department to arrange for a staff member to attend their board meeting. Our executive director is encouraging other RSCs to make a similar request. After the finalization of this report, which is on November 24th, the advisory forum will be meeting with the RCMP to review the attached quarterly report, as well as to consult on regional priorities for the coming year. The board will be updated verbally, which I will do shortly, on the results of this at the November 26th meeting. To date, there has been no information or communication from the department of their province-wide consultation project. All RSDs are pressing for this information. And for clarification, this is the study that they were doing about 1.5 years ago that still hasn't been completed. Just to give you the update from the advisory forum that was held on the 24th, we met with a number of the community members, and as well we had 3 representatives from the RCMP. One was there taking or recording the survey, or not the survey, but the consultation of priorities for the communities. And basically, in summary, the top 3 priorities identified by the communities was speeding, like traffic, drugs, and visibility, with visibility probably being, I think, probably number 1, and driving speeding number 2, and drugs number 3. So one of the other items that came up of interest was comments on the use of drones, which is seemingly becoming a problem for some of the communities, where people are actually having their houses looking out windows and seeing drones actually hovering around their homes. So this was reported, and again, they just recommended that people report back to the RCMP when this happened. We went through the quarterly report that was presented by Acting Sergeant Jeremy. My notes are in the kitchen. Sorry. Oh no, they're right here. Sorry. 1 second. I thought I left it in the kitchen. 1 minute. Okay. So Jeremy Hardy, I'm sorry, and Donna, and then there was one other person. Dawn, do you remember her name?
Milan.
Milan. Okay, well, thank you, Eleanor. Okay, and so anyways, through that quarterly report, again, truthfully, it's not really providing us with a lot of information because it's rolled up into very large districts. So individually, we're not getting the community reports that we were getting. And this has been requested again to the RCMP that this is something that we need. And if I can just give you an example of why it's important is that last week in Hanwell, we had a rash of break and entries, and nobody was really, it was never mentioned to anybody in council or through staff or anything. So we only learned about it after one of the business owners called to complain that the RCMP hadn't been responding to his calls after he had numerous items stolen from his business and everything. So again, it just, it's unacceptable. So we will keep our lobbying up and hope that we will see some improvement in 2021. So I move that the board receive the report of the community policing, the community policing report dated December 1st, 2020.
I
Second.
second that. Peter Morrison.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Just a quick update, Susan. A reporter from the Daily Gleaner contacted me because someone had given my name and said that I was concerned, our village was concerned over the use of drones and looking in bedroom windows and that.
Mhm.
So I was able to go back and retrieve that message on the residence page. And I read that off to him. I gave him the name and he brought it up on his screen, and he's also contacted other people. So I'm keeping an eye out, and I certainly hope that he puts some report in an article in the paper for us.
Very good.
Madam
So-
Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Judy.
Yes,
Madam Chair,
yes, Carson.
just noting that last year we started the process of putting up cameras at the entrances to all of the areas in the community, all of the main roads leading into the community. We're still working on it, waiting on NV Power to make some of them live. But we had an incident last weekend, and we have some information that was helped because of one of them that is live so far. So, but we've spent a fair amount of money setting this up. They're not live, you can't see them, but they are here in the office and record about every 10 days, re-record about every 10 days. Thank you, just for information.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ready for the question?
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Susan.
Okay.
We'll move on now to the collaborative activity reports, the regional pool update. Don, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My report, which is attached, deals only with the main conclusions of the feasibility study, location and cost, and it's pretty straightforward in its presentation. There are a couple of points I think that could benefit from some emphasis here this evening, and they're described in the executive summary that I included in the report. The whole report itself is over 140 pages, and so the executive summary tells the story much more succinctly, and so trying to save trees, that's what I included. The public outreach that we had was very robust. We had a lively session where people weren't shy about giving their opinions, and it was a broad base of consumer groups that met at New Maryland Center, actually. Unfortunately, they met just a couple of weeks before the lockdown, and otherwise our public consultation would have been deferred. I'm not sure we would have had it yet. In addition to that session, we issued a survey, and the survey, which asked a number of questions about use of pools and also some choice questions with respect to type of recreation infrastructure that people use. We received over 1,600 responses for that. And I'm told by recreation consultants that that's a huge return for a community of our size, or more indicative of a community 8 to 10 times our size. So I think that the people who are interested in this, they made their opinions known. They took their time to engage. The facility that the working group settled on that satisfied most of the needs for our region, and recognizing that no facility satisfies them all, would be a facility with 3 tanks. There'd be a 10-lane, 25-meter pool. There'd be smaller tanks, somewhat smaller, about 3/4 that size, 12 by 25 meters, and that'd be a leisure pool and a teaching pool. And then about half that size, again, there'd be a therapy pool. And so these are the therapy pools are the ones that we've seen where there's 0 grade access, and people who do aqua size rehabilitation, people with disabilities, mobility issues. And the concept design is done in such a way that it allows for other facilities to be plugged on. So it's not really common to build a single purpose recreational facility anymore. In the days that I grew up, each neighborhood had its ball field, and each collection of neighborhoods had a pool, and then it sort of staggered off that. But the most efficient way these days is seen to be to create recreation hubs. And so that's why the functional design allows for that quite easily. So a couple of weeks ago, we had our last meeting with the working group, and we finalized the report, and we delivered it to the participating communities. And just to refresh your memories, that's New Maryland and Hanwell, Oromocto and Fredericton, as well as the surrounding local service districts that are a party to the current recreation service agreement. So it's really up to those communities now to see what happens next. It's a comprehensive report. I'm sure it'll take their staff some time to work through it and develop information and briefings for their respective councils and recommendations. The report does identify a couple of necessary next steps if this initiative is going to go forward. And they would be, of course, the development of a funding plan and a renewal of the cost and revenue sharing agreements between the communities that were going to participate. And finally, and perhaps most challenging because it would be new, some type of collaborative governance structure for the facility. So I don't know when we'll hear about this again, when it will come up. It likely would have got some media attention when we issued it if, the second wave hadn't hit and St. John had gone to orange, and then we have gone to orange. I know that for those of us who watch the news, the half-hour newscast is about 24 minutes of COVID, and then 1 or 2 other stories. So that's the report, Madam Chair. It was refreshing to work collaboratively with the communities and their representatives. And if the board has any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them.
Are there any questions for Don?
Madam Chair, this is Peter Morris. I just have one question for Dawn, you indicated the survey had there were like 1,600 plus responses. Was that from any particular concentrated area, or was it pretty much representative of the area that you sent the questionnaire out to?
Well, good question. The geographic distribution, it covered the whole area that we were contemplating, but it did have a higher response rate from the core, if you will. The further out you got, the less there was, but then that's also reflective of the relative community's population as well. So when we looked at it, we looked for a geographic bias in the responses, and there was none that was strikingly apparent. I'm sure that if we were to have an actuary come in and look at it, they could spend a lot of time and energy, and they might come to some conclusions, but I'm not certain that they would be substantively different than what we saw.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. Appreciate it.
Question, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Just a question about those outside, for instance, in our community. When I asked this question, when we met with Mr. Ramsey some time ago in the initial roundabouts, there was only one person in our community that expressed any interest in this project whatsoever or in supporting it. My question would be, given that though, there needs to be some user fee for those people that are not participating in that. Was that under consideration? Thank you.
Right. So, Madam Chair, we didn't develop a user pay model. I think that Director Carson's correct that this facility, if it takes off, will have several user pay models. One of them will be a certain group of residents will pay for this through their tax rate. Others will pay for it under a shared agreement, and yet others, I suspect, will just be straight user fee. So I expect that it will come and have tiered pricing that's reflective of the financial contribution for operating capital of the other communities that are involved.
any further questions for Dawn? Thank you, Dawn. We'll move on now to number 8, the annual departmental staff reports. A, staff report, the local government reform. Dawn, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an issue that has been around the province for a long, long time, and is profiled this evening in your package and in the popular press as a result of some fundamental changes that were made to the Department of Environment and Local Government by this new government. Environment Department became the Department of Environment and Climate Change, and that signaled that climate change was important. The Department of Local Government became the Department of Local Government and Local Government Reform. So that's a significant change because reform has been talked about, bandied around, and promises were made by various governments that this initiative would be studied. And this government is not really saying that. On the 15th of October, the new minister had a meeting via Zoom with the executive directors of the Regional Service Commission, and it was a get to know you kind of meeting. And he talked about how, they were committed to reform. They didn't know what it was going to look like. And he hadn't even got his mandate letter from the premier at that point in time. 2 hours later, in sort of the regular media monitoring I do, I noticed that he's given an interview to the Telegraph Journal, and he said that he's going to address what he called the demographic deficit in local service districts, and that they would have, I don't want to call them normal, but traditional elections by 2024. And of course that, commentators jumped on that. And, the reform advocates said that this isn't going far enough, and people who are opposed to it saw it as a money grab, and nothing sort of transpired from that. But you know, the genie's out of the bottle, and so the municipal associations pulled some work off the shelves that they have, and they submitted it to the minister in terms of trying to manage the outcome, get what they wanted out of it. The Association of Municipal Administrators, of which I'm a member, by the way, so I want to declare that here. They submitted a survey amongst their members, and actually asked 6 questions, and I've included the survey in your package. And the majority of those responses came from smaller municipalities with populations under 5,000. And you should be aware that these are the administrators' views, and they may not completely align with their respective councils' views. But as a group, they said that the top 2 things that reform should address were fair taxation of local service districts and regional cooperation. And they said the 2 things that it shouldn't address would be amalgamation and an expansion of a role for the Regional Service Commission, whose job it is for cooperation. So you can look at that and say to yourself, it seems to be a contradiction in thinking there. The other report that I included that I thought you should be aware of was a report that was done by the Francophone Association of Municipalities. It's about 70 pages. It looks at money, and it looks at the division of taxes, and it ends up arguing that the entire province should be municipalized. And so, in other words, it would do away with local service districts. There'd be a mayor and council for every person in New Brunswick. But they say in their conclusion that the current local governance model in New Brunswick is unsustainable, and it leads to inefficient use of land and public funds. So these are the kinds of things that are out there swimming around that the minister's hearing and that various groups are promoting. So early in last month, I was approached by the Treasury Board to sit on a working group entitled Successful Regions. And it has a couple of people from the provincial government, 2 of my counterparts as executive directors, and 3 CAOs from around the province. And we've been asked to sort of try to define what a successful region looks like. And when that started, I was confused a little bit about where this was going, and it seemed kind of nebulous to me. And I think I'm going to clear that up in a bit. Prior to the conclusion of my report, I say that, this report was prepared the 24th, and on the 26th, I was going to be in another Zoom session with the minister. And this really got interesting, and what it is the bulk of what I want to talk to you about this evening. The minister advised us that the premier wants reform completed this year. And this week that we're in, Minister Elaine is going to be meeting with the premier to finalize the scope and mandate of that reform. And likely that'll become public next week. The Department of Local Government, that typically operates with 6 to 8 employees, is putting together 12 to 15 staff members who are going to be dedicated to reform over the next year, work on nothing but municipal reform. And by the middle of this month, they expect to launch a separate government website devoted to local government reform. And one by one, a series of topics will come up there to assist a public dialogue. And I don't know that they would call it a consultation, but they want people to talk about the topics that they've identified. All of which is supposed to lead to the issuance of a green paper in Fredericton in February. Now, governments issue two kinds of papers, green papers and white papers. So when a government issues a white paper, that's what we hear about most often. It talks about what they're going to do. There's a commitment by government to follow that path. But it's dangerous to put that out because sometimes it brings people out who are against it and the passions get inflamed. And so they have another tool. And this is not just the province, the federal government as well. They have what they call a green paper. And in a green paper, the understanding is the government is not committed to anything that's in the green paper. It's a thought-provoking analysis. And so it's a way to issue a white paper without it really being a white paper and then finding out what changes you need to make as you move forward to legislation. So anyway, this green paper should be out in the middle of February. And there are 4 working groups right now working on, populated by different individuals, working on topics that are important to reform. Democratization, and so that's a local government representative for everyone. Strategic infrastructure, so that would be the pool that we just discussed. Regional services, that would perhaps be something that happened in Antigonish County just last week, where the county government took 3 separate water utilities and put them together. And now that county has one shared service, one shared management. And so that's kind of the regional service approach to it. And look, the talk was going fast, and I confess I missed the 4th one. But all of that is supposed to detail, finish off as a white paper in September of 2021. And from that, legislation being introduced in the latter part of 2021 and the early part of 2022. So what I can say about that is, in the 20 years that I've been involved in local government, reform has always been discussed, and there's a constituency that thought that reform was critical and we needed it right away. And the only promise that government ever made about it was to study it, think about it, and consult. And this is way more than that. This sounds like a plan, and it sounds like it's pretty well developed. This topic has never had such a clear path and a timeline. And we can make whatever assumption we want out of that. And the reason I'm stopping short of advising you that change is coming is because about 18 months ago, I thought change was coming, and I told you that, and nothing happened. So it's still possible that this is not going to go anywhere, but it sure looks and smells different to me. So that's my report, Madam Chair. And really what I'm hoping to get tonight is some feedback and direction from the board if possible, and not by way of resolution, because I don't have a recommendation for you, but I'm going to be involved in this, at least one working group. And, you know, I'd like my comments to be reflective of whatever consensus there may be with the board, and also to be reflective of whatever disagreements that we might have at the board. I want to represent the thinking in this region accurately.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Dawn?
Madam Chair, I do, Eleanor Lindsay.
Yes.
Will there be consultation in the communities? Will they be coming out to the communities and having meetings with people, especially if there's amalgamation?
Well, I haven't heard that the tactical plan. That would be part of the tactical plan. How are we going to do this? And really all I heard from the minister at this point was more or less his strategic plan. This is what we want to do. So I have a lot of questions about how as well, Eleanor, and I'm going to see what I can get with that, and which is a long way of saying I'm not certain.
Another question, the website you mentioned, when do you think that'll be up and running?
They said mid-December, and you know, as soon as I know, I will make sure that the board knows. And so we will send that out as an email blast to all of you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions for Dawn? No, thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll move on now to the staff presentation, the landfill EIA. Dawn and Brett, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is primarily going to be Brett. I just want to introduce the topic. We have talked to the directors before in the development of our physical plan and our 5-year plan about how it's strategic from our point of view to build up on the cells that we have. And we just can't do that because our agreement to operate caps us at a certain height. Brett and his team have been working very hard preparing the organization to go through an environmental impact assessment to be empowered to go higher. And these types of initiatives, they're complicated and they're detailed, and so I'm very pleased with the work that Brett and his team have done. We've initiated, we're in the early stages of that. There's a public consultation component, and so you very well may get questions from your constituents or environmental or recycling advocates, and we want you to be well informed to be able to deal with them. And I think that after you see Brent's presentation tonight, that you will feel well equipped. And so that's my way of introduction. And when it comes to content and expertise, I'm going to yield to Brett.
Thanks, Don. No pressure. So I am going to, for the first time tonight, try to give a presentation on Zoom where I am actually running the slides. So please bear with me. The other thing before I start the presentation, I'll just point out that there are some videos, some special effects to help you visualize what we're talking about. And I've chosen a certain resolution of those videos. I hope that accommodates everybody's bandwidth. I actually spent a fair bit of time trying to refine what kind of resolution to use. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Let me just see here. Is that working for everybody? Can everybody see the title page?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, excellent. So as Don said, the purpose of this presentation is really to give you a technical overview of what we're requesting in our EIA application, what the potential benefits are, how the process will unfold, and what you as directors can expect throughout the EIA process that we anticipate to end in June. So the questions that we're hoping to answer tonight are, again, what is RSC 11 asking for? Why is this environmental impact assessment so important? What are the benefits of a successful application? How does the process work, and what can we expect? So a logical place to start is what we're asking for and why we're asking for it. What we're asking for is simple, very straightforward. We're looking for an increase in the maximum disposal height of 29 meters. So that would be a vertical expansion of 29 meters. We are not asking for an expansion of the footprint of the landfill, and that's equally important, and we'll get into that a little later in the presentation. I also thought that this would be a good time to explain geodetic elevation, because like I said, the application itself is for 29 meters, but you're going to hear a lot of other measurements during this process. Geodetic elevation is a fancy way of referring to essentially mean sea level. Our current approval gives us authorization to landfill up to 59 meters geodetic. And the request is 29 meters higher than that. That's 88 meters geodetic. So the reason I'm going through this, I want to make it clear because this is something that may come up. People are going to hear that number 88 meters. This does not mean that the landfill is going to appear to be a mountain that is 88 meters high. The base elevation is 30 meters above sea level. And so again, this is purely a 29-meter increase in the current elevation of the landfill. So that brings up the question, the obvious question, why 29 meters? It's an odd number. And to explain that, I'm going to give you just a brief background. When the original EIA was completed on our site in the 1980s, they identified a limit of waste disposal. And I'll refer to that throughout the presentation as the footprint. But essentially what it is basically a rectangular shape that is a boundary that is within our property. So it maintains about a 30 or 40 meter buffer from the edge of our property. And that's where we are allowed in this footprint to landfill waste. Now, best practice in landfilling is to ensure that you have 4-to-1 side slopes on your landfill. And I've talked about that over the years with the directors. But the way that we got to this 29 meters, if you extend a 4-to-1 slope from that boundary, from that edge of the footprint in towards the center of the site, you reach a maximum elevation of 88 meters in the center. And that's really what we're looking for in this EIA application, is to maximize the usable disposal space within our disposal area. The other point that I'd like to emphasize with this slide is that only a small portion of the at the center of the site will actually be impacted by this EIA. There will be a small summit in the center of our site that actually reaches this 88-meter geodetic elevation. And it won't be a peak. There'll be a small working surface in the center so we can use machines on that, install gas extraction if necessary. So only a small area will actually reach this maximum elevation. So this is where the special effects begin. And I hope this comes through clearly for everybody. But what we did, and it was Don's suggestion, it was a great suggestion to help visualize the what we're talking about here. The drone that we're looking at, the footage that we're looking at, it's taking off from an elevation of 59 meters. Or yeah, 59 meters geodetic. And we're bringing it up that 29 meters. It's going to stop at the final height that we're looking for approval to go to. Now, what you're looking at in front of you, that's the active disposal area. But we're just about at that 29 meter level right now. You can really see from this image, we're not talking a huge increase here. But because of legislation, we're required to go through this process, specifically because we're a landfill. But this is the 29 meters. We thought it would be a good idea to do a pan, a 360-degree pan. And so you're really going to get a bird's eye view of what you would see from the top elevation, and more importantly, what would be able to see us from this elevation, as far as the eye can see. So you'll see our baling facility, our recycling facility off on the left, our new cells that we built this summer in the foreground here. What I would really focus on really in this shot, you can see that tree line off in the distance. And the base of those trees is the edge of our footprint, the edge of our limit of waste. There would be a 4-to-1 slope that would extend from the base of those trees to the exact location where this footage is being taken. And so you're not talking an abrupt rise. It's a very gradual rise. And again, up to this final location. The other thing I'll point out as we move around here, you'll see in the background there's an active work area. You'll see a few machines back there. I'll speak about that location in a little bit in more detail. That is the future site of our, if the EIA isn't successful, of our 2022 cell that's estimated to cost about $2.3 million. As we continue to pan, you can see Fredericton off in the distance. You can also see the Vanier Highway showing up. Again, it will be a small portion of our site that actually reaches this elevation. But we have a visibility berm there. We do want to stay out of sight as much as possible. And we do have the capacity, if necessary, we could seed that with trees and enhance that visibility barrier so we would remain out of sight. As we come around, the last thing I'll point out, you'll see the elm tree facility, remediation facility. On the camera side of that facility, the edge of that facility is, again, our limit of waste. And that 4-to-1 slope would extend up from there. So the big takeaway, I think, from this shot, number one, it's not going to be terribly visible to anybody in the surrounding areas. And the second thing is we're not talking about a huge increase in height. However, there are some substantial benefits that go along with it. And with that, we'll move on to what those benefits are to not only the residents, but all the ratepayers, including their commercial customers. So the first group of benefits that I'll speak to are the environmental ones. Like I mentioned early on, this doesn't include an increase in the footprint of the landfill. And as a result of that, there's no wildlife or habitat destruction included with the CIA or anticipated. There's no required removal of vegetation. And the active area, keep in mind, the only area affected by the CIA is actually in the center of an active landfill site. It's obviously, it's not within 30 meters of any water courses or any wetlands. And so, there are some huge benefits that I'll speak to in subsequent points, but the big takeaway here is the cost environmentally, from what we can tell, is zero. Leads me into the next big benefit, and this is a big one, increased lifespan of the landfill. So by extending those 4-to-1 slopes up, you'll see in another video that's coming up here, but by avoiding that huge flat tabletop surface at 59 meters and really maximizing the space that we have, we're going to gain about 2 million cubic meters of usable disposal space. And that translates into an additional 17 years of operating capacity at our facility. You may remember in previous presentations, currently we estimate the facility to fill up around the year 2043. This would comfortably put us out to 2060. And so it would significantly delay any need to site a new disposal facility within the region. If, you know, when we talk about EIAs, this is a relatively minor EIA relative to siting in a whole new facility. So in that respect, it's really a no-brainer. The next big benefit are the long-term efficiencies that are associated with it. So by building on top of existing landfill, we're able to sort of leverage the existing infrastructure that we have on site. That includes the leachate collection system, leachate treatment facility, surface water treatment pond, landfill gas management system. All of that translates into a reduced construction, operation, and maintenance costs. And we would realize those savings over the entire period that we're active up top. Again, 17 years. So pretty significant savings there. Not only for our customers, like I said, the commercial customers, residential customers, also for municipalities and all the ratepayers through savings in tipping fees. And then the big one, the last but not least, we're looking at significantly lower cell costs. And so the explanation there, first I'd like to talk just briefly about piggybacking, and that's a term that I take for granted in our business. Piggybacking simply refers to the practice of building a new cell on top of an existing cell. And that's what we've been doing at Regional Service Commission 11 for over 5 years. We've got a lot of experience in that. And that's the reason that our cells as of late have been relatively low cost. You realize savings not only in liner requirements, and so we're not required to use a geomembrane liner, which is a big, thick, heavy plastic liner system, quite expensive. It also saves on excavation requirements. And excavation is terribly expensive. It involves labor costs, it requires machines, it eats up a lot of fuel. And so all those savings are associated with this practice of piggybacking. And it results in dramatically lower cell costs. To give you an idea of how much lower these cell costs are, it's a factor of 10. You'll remember in our presentation on the 5-year financial plan in November, Mary Kay was talking about anticipated cell construction costs. And there was one cell in particular that may have jumped out at everybody, but it's in 2022. And the anticipated cost for the 2022 construction was approximately $2.3 million. If this EIA application is successful, rather than $2.3 million in 2022, we could be looking at, say, $230,000, $250,000. So big difference there. And obviously those are costs that wouldn't have to be passed on to ratepayers. So huge advantage. Now, speaking of that 2022 to 2037 construction schedule, I wanted to give you another video that really illustrates the contrast. And this will show the another shot. This is looking from the north to the south of the planned construction site for our 2022 cell. See this large mountain, our gas plant is in the foreground. This large mountain, focus on that. This mountain has to be excavated out prior to construction in 2022. It's a tight timeline. To give you an idea of the volume, it's approximately 2 cubic kilometers of excavation that has to take place. All of that has to be dug up, transported to another part of the site, and placed. We've been working at it for a couple of years. We can certainly get this done by 2022, but some of those high costs are as a result of bringing in additional forces to accomplish the task. This really helps you visualize it. The other thing you can see here, it extends out. It gets a little easier as time goes on, but it's still a significant job. You can see us sort of panning back over towards the active part of the cell now. You can also see how there's a green spot over in the right-hand side. That will be the last cell that we're currently authorized to build on the top of the landfill. Now, I don't want to talk too much while these videos are playing because the videos are pretty cool. I was just stunned with them when we got them produced, so I don't want to distract you from them. I do have one more, and it'll show you from the opposite perspective. So this would be from the south looking northward, again, the baling facility. And in the foreground in this shot, we're looking back towards that huge mountain that we're going to be digging, but this gives you an idea that there's still more excavation work to be done onwards through 2037. You can see our stockpiling areas in the foreground, crushed rock, screened clay, pit run gravel, all of the materials we use in cell construction. The biggest points that I would like to highlight on this video, again, that green area on the right will be the last cell that we build on top with their current approval. You'll see the equipment parked on the left and that tree line. That's the limit of waste. That will be the base of future cells. And that will be where the 4-to-1 slopes begin. The current elevation, by the way, of this camera is about where your final elevation will be with the if we're successful in the application. But again, this helps visualize the nature of the flat tabletop that we'll be confronted with if the application isn't successful. You'll see how flat it is off to the right. It will always be that flat. Which creates long-term management problems as far as post-closure, keeping the water from pooling on the top. So there's some engineering benefits, environmental and economic benefits all associated with this application. So that's the technical side of it. So now comes the explanation of the process itself. And there's really 4 main components to this process. The first we've already completed, which is the development and submission of the EIA registration document. The second component is the technical review committee. I'll refer to it as the TRC. It's composed of roughly 30 experts representing various branches of government. And the role of the TRC, they'll do an initial review of that EIA registration document, come back to us with questions. Our responses will generate more questions, which we will respond to again, and then we repeat that whole process for a third time. So there are 3 interactions, key interactions with the TRC during the EIA process. And I apologize for the acronyms. The third main component of this whole process is an important one, and that's the public and First Nations consultations. To accommodate this, we've really got a 3-pronged approach. The first is through our website. We'll be doing an expansion to our website that will provide information like the EIA registration document, a very technical document. We'll provide that to the public. It'll also be an avenue for the public to provide comment to us and ask questions. We want to be as transparent as possible throughout. The second approach that we're going to use is information letters to landowners within the immediate area. So that would be a 2-kilometer catchment area, MLAs within our Regional Service Commission boundaries, municipal governments, First Nations, and of course the Fredericton International Airport, which is a key stakeholder in our area. Obviously they have planes that fly near us all the time, and we want to make sure that we don't have an impact on their operations. And last but not least, public meetings and comments that we receive there. And to that end, we're going to do it much like we're doing it tonight through a Zoom format. And in that regard, we're really fortunate. You know, the planning division has all kinds of experience with these kinds of things. They do public consultations on behalf of the minister. They've done it for months now over Zoom. And so we're really going to leverage the expertise on the planning side to accomplish this. So we're really well positioned to meet the requirements of that the consultation phase. Then last but not least, once we've done all of those things, we roll up all of the comments, we roll up all of our responses to those comments into a final report submitted into the province, and we receive a final determination on the EIA proposal. So here we have a Gantt chart. It shows you the key timelines and interactions throughout the process. Really, the only thing that I'll point out here, just so I don't repeat myself from the last slide, the key point for me on this slide is the last one, number 10, final report and EIA determination. We're anticipating that to be completed sometime before June 30th, 2021. We're very hopeful that will be the case. It's not entirely in our control, but in meetings with the province, they don't see a problem necessarily with meeting that timeline. So we're hopeful. So that leads us into what can you expect? And when I say what can we expect, I mean, what can you as directors expect during this application process? What you can expect are a lot of questions and a lot of interest, not only from constituents and councils, but also friends and family. And the second point that I really wanted to drive home on this, and Don had mentioned it in his introduction, you can also expect full RSC 11 staff support in responding and helping to navigate through the process. Again, I expect it's going to be over a 6-month period. You will receive, again, questions from people that are interested in recycling, from an environmental perspective. And again, I can assure you that our initial application document is very detailed when it comes to the environmental issues, potential issues. We look at butterflies, we look at birds, we look at different plant species. I've got a degree in biology. I don't even recognize some of the species that are listed in it. It's so detailed. But the point is that as you guys get questions, as the board and as the directors receive questions, don't feel that you're on your own. Don't feel that you need to respond on your own. You've got a lot of support, a lot of staff support, and feel free to reach out to Don or myself, and we will help answer those questions for you. If we don't have the answers, our consultants will have the answers, but don't feel like you're on your own. Feel free to reach out, and we're happy to provide any support that we can. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions, Madam Chair.
Does anyone have any questions for Brett?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's start with Carson. Did you say yes?
Yes.
Okay, Carson.
Just a couple of idle costs. I know that it took the village of Chipman on our project for our sewage treatment plant 16 months to get an EIA approval with all of the First Nations issues and also rare plant defined, that we're going to try and make our village flower, since it costs us so much money. The questions are, what is the current rate of settling per year on that mound? If you had to rate what it settles per year, how much does it settle per year? That would be the first question. This project with the 4-to-1 slope, what is the anticipated, and we only know it can be anticipated, impact on gas production? And what's the anticipated cost of the CIA? Thank you.
Sure, Carson. So to answer your first question on the settlement rate, you're not going to like this, but it depends. It depends on the thickness of the garbage, obviously, right? Typically what you can expect, though, in our more established landfill areas where we're looking at a current depth of, say, 30 meters, there's minimal settlement in years 1 and 2. It's typically about 5 years, and you'll see that 30 meters shrink down into, say, 28 meters. Final settlement, from what we've seen, might be 4 meters. And the reason that we're able to piggyback now is that because of that settlement. So in cells that we've landfilled, say, that were active, say, 20 years ago, when I first started working for what used to be the Solid Waste Commission, we were filling those cells. They've settled 7 meters in the interim. So that is a process. It takes place. I mean, things break down, whether they're in the landfill or in a compost pile. That process is a natural one. Your next question on gas production, as far as that 4-to-1 slope and what its impact may be, there really is no impact on that. That's a current practice that we've always followed. Our toe slopes have always been 4-to-1. The only way that would relate to gas production is your required setback of your extraction piping and your extraction wells. Standard practice is about 7 to 15 meters setback from a side slope. But the way those slopes are constructed, they're impermeable. We use what they call a final capping procedure. With screened clay, we have to meet permeability requirements and have an engineer sign off on them. So no huge impact there. Last but not least, I don't remember what your last question was. I'm sorry.
You anticipate this cost?
Oh, the cost.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the cost has already been absorbed in our, in the development of the document with our engineering budget for year 2020. When we looked at estimates, and it'll depend on how the process goes, we're looking at total cost probably of, I expect it would be under $100,000. Yeah, so well worth it. Well worth it.
Thank you. Can you put your hand up? Because I don't know who else wanted to speak. Okay, Susan?
Yes, I just wondered, how long is it going to take? Now, you say it's going to extend the life by 17 years, which will take it to 2060. But how long is it going to take for this piggybacking up and up to that level? Like, how many years will it take to get to the top elevation?
It would, Susan, that's a good question. It would happen fairly quickly at first, but it would be in a relatively small area. And typically the way that we fill a landfill cell is we bale. We're a bale fill. So one of the advantages is that we don't have to apply cover on a daily basis. And so a lot of other facilities that don't bale, they have a lot of soil and cover material filling up their landfill rather than waste. So we typically do 4 bale lifts at a time. So we typically raise increments of 4 bales would be 6 meters at a time. So we would probably build it up at a fairly quick rate, but you'd see it at the edges. Those large cells, for example, that you saw in the foreground as we had that large panning shot, to put the first layer of frost protection down, and that's the first thing you do when you build a cell, is you try to protect the liner system. Typically it takes months, but it would depend on the total footprint of your cell, how quickly we'd raise it up. In a 1-year cell, 1 year, we'd be up at final elevation in those areas. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Bob, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, Brett, are the other major landfills in New Brunswick, are they following this or going to follow the same process?
Bob, I can't speak for them. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to but I'm sure they would be interested in it. A lot of the benefits that apply to us would apply equally to their sites as well, I would suspect.
So yeah, so it'd be beneficial for them to keep an eye on us then.
I suspect they'll be watching on how this unfolds. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions? Dale?
Yeah.
Dale, yes.
I don't really have a question, but I just want to speak to Brent. I thought it was a very good and thorough presentation. I really was interested in that. Thank you, Brent.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay, Peter?
I was just wondering, yeah, I would echo what Dale said, Brett. Could we get a copy of that presentation?
Oh, certainly.
Okay, I think that would be useful to have some of the details. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have a question or a comment for Brett? I don't see anyone's hand raised. Brett, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you. It was an excellent presentation. And myself, I did enjoy the videos in there. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay, now we'll move on to number C, staff report, HHW contract extension. I think that's just a brief update, Brett.
It is. I was just about to put myself on mute. I forgot about the next one. This is a staff report. It's for information purposes only. References a board motion that was made in November of 2017 for household hazardous waste disposal services. And it's really recycling services for us now. It was awarded to TerraPure, and the original contract duration was for a 3-year term with the option to extend for 2 additional 1-year periods. There was an escalator in the quote allowing for a 2% rate increase, and they were the lowest bid at the time. What I would say, I can't give you an exact number, an exact value on this contract annual. It typically ranges approximately $135,000, depending on flooding, other variables, but it's usually in that $135,000 per year mark. That's why we wanted to make sure that the board was aware of it. The only other thing I would add is that TerraPure has been providing a fantastic service to us. They're based out of Sussex, and they've been doing a great job for us for the previous 3 years, and staff intends to extend that contract by the first optional 1-year term, effective at the end of December. That's it.
Thank you, Brett. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Brett? I don't see anyone's hand up. Thank you so much, Brett. Really appreciate it.